Hello, everyone, and welcome to Laugh and Learn, Human Design, Environments, and we're doing part 2 of Environments. I am joined by there you go. I'm, part 2 of the environment.
Gotta love the reactions.
Gotta love the reactions. And I am joined by Jennifer from My Holistic Self. All of the links to both of our channels on TarotStache are in the description below, as is how you can find the Laugh and Learn series, the Human Design playlist, and where to get your I always forget what to call these body graphs. Your graphs.
Yeah.
So, and Jennifer has been making some updates to her website, so it's quite user friendly. It's very easy. So there we go. So,
yay!
What's news with you?
We're trying.
Oh yeah. Well, you're succeeding. Let's face it.
Good. Wonderful. Yeah. No, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I love these talks that we do.
I do too. I do too. I was telling Jennifer backstage. I went in and I did Jeffrey's chart for him. I printed it off. I have not looked at it because I want him to look at it first. And then I did a relationship chart, which was very interesting. So there is a plethora of things that one can do on her website. So
all kinds of fun stuff you can find there.
Yes. As always, this is for entertainment purposes only. Do not make decisions based upon what we say. Seek professional assistance. Really. So, all right. So, Kaylee is here. Hello, Kaylee.
Hey, Kaylee.
So, she's loving that blue color on you.
Oh, thanks.
And I do want to say thank you to everyone. I know you have a lot of options for where you can spend your time on the internet. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. Hello, Nalani. Good to see you.
Hello.
So we're talking about environments. Could you remind everyone, what does that mean? What are environments?
Yeah. So let's backtrack a little bit, because I think that it's important to really understand why environments are important.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So we can do a little bit of a recap, and I can dive in a little bit more. So with environments, they're associated with our nodes. So the North Node and South Node has a lot to do with our direction in life, right? So what we're moving from and what we're moving to. And so our nodes are a big part of the personal health system in human design. And Ra explains that, especially with environments, first 30 years, environments play a role, but they're not as significant. But after our Saturn return, when we're moving into that North Node energy, it's a time where we really do need to pay attention to our environments, because when we're able to establish our place in the world, right, then we begin to really get our story going.
Okay.
And our environments play a big part in being able to live our profile, which we haven't really talked about yet, and our incarnation cross, which is our purpose. And so those are both things that I think we'll have to get to at some point down the road. But when it comes to honoring our aura type, living by our strategy, following our authority, being in the right environment is going to help us flourish with that.
Yes.
Right. And so when we look at the whole idea of a personal health system, right, digestion talks about what we're putting into the body and how we're nourishing the body with food and all of that, whereas environments is about how we're nourishing the body in the external, right, in that which is around us. And so, when we're looking at this idea of the nodes, the whole thing with the nodes is how we are in community with others, right? It's all about the fact that we are not alone and that we have other people around us. And the environment, if we're in the correct environment, it actually helps us to, it kind of protects us in our relationship with others.
Okay.
So because it helps our aura to be able to fully be what it needs to be if we're in that correct environment. Right. And so Ra even talks about how being in the right environment can help impact our health, longevity of life, right? It's all of those things that are impacted. So if we're in an environment that's not good for us, we're going to feel that depletion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We're going to feel it. We may not initially notice it until it gets a little farther along and we notice other things that are impacting it. Is that correct?
Possibly. Let's take just the left and right. So I did print this up for you guys because I thought it was important. I know last time there was a little bit of kind of back and forth about how do I know, if I'm observed or observer. So I wanted to just kind of show you guys. So right now we're looking at.
I'm going to embiggen you.
Okay, embiggen me.
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to change styles. I'm going to embiggen you correctly. There you go.
Okay. So what we're looking at right now is the environments, right? And so it's this arrow right here on the bottom left of the human design chart. That's the one that we're looking at. And so if it is a left-facing arrow, it's observed. So it's going to be one of these, depending on which environment we fall into. And left arrows are busy. These are people who are meant to be go, 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 right? Doing stuff. Right arrows observed. So mine's facing right, and my state is supposed to be relaxed. And so anybody who's in the right is going to fall into one of these, depending on, again, where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, we're looking at this right or this bottom left arrow. Is it facing left or is it facing right? That's going to help you determine which of the subcategories you fall into.
Okay.
Okay. And so what Ra talks about with this is that left is going to be strategic, right? It's meant to be active. It's meant to be busy. It's meant to be focused on the things to do. So that's going to be a much more active energy,
mm-hmm.
and a much more active environment is needed for that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas right environments are more peripheral. So they're not meant to be active. They're designed to be focused on taking in what's happening in the environment. Right. And so this is that difference between observer and observed. Right. This right facing environment is the observer. We're paying attention. It's this peripheral kind of taking it all in and noticing what's happening. Whereas the left facing arrow, that strategic, is go, go, go. They're meant to be observed.
Okay.
Okay. So to your question about will we notice right away? Anybody who is left facing arrow that goes, say, to visit a friend and they have to sit on the couch, they're not going to feel comfortable.
Okay.
Right. We had some friends over the weekend, and one of our friends, I guarantee you, is a left facing environment, was up, was like, what can I do? How can I help? Did not want to sit down at all and felt much better being able to be in the kitchen and helping with all of the stuff that's happening. Right. Whereas the right facing arrow friend was sitting at the table and talking and just enjoying the conversation and just noticing what's happening. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's the same even in my relationship. I'm a right facing arrow. I'm just kind of paying attention to what's happening. If I have to be go, 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 it's overstimulating and all of that. Whereas my partner is definitely that let's give her, get her done. Can't sit still. Energy.
Kaylee said, this makes so much sense. I'm all left facing arrows.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which makes a lot of sense why you have to always be doing something, right? Even if you're sitting down, it's what can I, do crafty wise with my hands? What can I be doing? Right. Because there's a comfort in the action of the do.
Oh, sure. Yes. Yes.
right? It doesn't always mean that you have to be buzzing around everywhere, although that can be part of it. But being able to just be in that space where you are able to be active is going to just feel better.
Yeah, I have multiple charts done, multiple body graphs, and I'm like am I left or am I right? And anyhow, I'll find it. Sorry. I'll stop worrying about that now.
That's okay.
So, because I mean, if everybody doesn't have the chart, link is below on where you can get your free body graph, graph. Very easy to do.
Yeah.
So
Gerald, yours is left.
Okay. Shoot. Okay.
Right?
Am I really? Okay.
Yeah. Which, I mean, think about it. How many shows do you do?
Well, not necessarily enough in my mind, but I do a lot of shows.
Right. But it's that need to be, right? Like I said, active doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like running all over the place. It is a mind thing too, right? Like we need to keep our mind active. We need to be doing, learning, laugh and learn,
yes.
growing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
Right. And so we notice like, okay, I love to learn. I'm a line one in my personality. I love to deep dive. I love to learn things. And I need to in order to feel confident to be able to talk about them. But I need to shut off, like shut completely off.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. What's that like to shut completely off?
Right, because that active, that's not gonna resonate. That's
hashtag asking for a friend. What's it like to shut completely off? Don't ask me. I'm always thinking about something. Always fiddling with stuff. So so
yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, like when we're looking at this in light of environments, right? I would be curious when you do different activities or you go out to different places, right? What kinds of things feel good? And have you noticed if you go somewhere and you're like, you know what, this doesn't feel right for me. This just doesn't, right?
I definitely like a lot of movement. I'm not I want activity. Quiet is not, I have to be in the right frame of mind for quiet.
Yeah. Right. And so, going on a hike as opposed to sitting under a tree for a while.
Yes. Or sitting under a tree with a bunch of people.
That's activity still, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So we notice how these different things interact. And so, for you with that, like, okay, I can pull up your chart again if we want to. Like I know I'm kitchens, and we're gonna dive into kitchens shortly, and your mountains.
I'm mountains, yes.
So yeah, so we're gonna do both of those, both of those today.
So okay, Denise is here, and
hello.
Russ Bob's Barbara is here. Good to see everybody. So all right, so do you want to start with a quick review of caves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can totally do that. So actually, let me see if I can pull up. I'll give you this picture here. See if that makes a difference. So what we're doing is we're kind of walking up the ladder, right? And so with all of these, whether we're working with determination or environment, perspective, motivation, any of them, we kind of work our way up the ladder. And so the most, he says primitive, but it's the survival instinct that comes in first, right? Is going to be at that first level there. So that's caves, right? And so caves, markets, and kitchens all fall under that midline. So the first three and then the next three. These three are all hardscapes. And hardscapes, when we're looking at it, has to do with how we kind of formed walls for our civilization. So what that means is caves is that first kind of way that we did that. right?
Yes.
So when you think about, ancient civilizations and things like that, caves was one of the first kind of gathering places where people lived.
Yes.
And so, you think, okay, I'm a cave. That means maybe I'm a hermit or I need to be by myself. It's not about being alone. It's about feeling safe and secure.
Sure.
Right. And needing that safety and security. And so this is why, when we talk about people who are a cave environment, they feel safest in a room where there's one door, one entryway, right? As opposed to multiple, to be able to, if you have a closet in your bedroom, taking the door off of the closet, right? Or putting something in front of it to block it off so that you can feel like, okay, there's just one in and out to the room can help with that. If you're out, being in a spot that is up against a wall, right? Or something where you're able to see what's kind of going on around you, right? Just to feel that safety.
Sure.
So, yeah. I'm a Cancer. My shell is my cave. Nice. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that cave energy is really about, how do I feel safe and secure? So if you like driving and you're in your car, you may feel like, okay, I feel like I'm in, I can lock all of the doors around me. Does that help me to feel more safe and secure? Right? Versus say being on a bus where we don't really have that control and there's people coming in and out of multiple entryways and all of that. I mean, cars, obviously there's multiple doors, but we have a bit more control of our own environment there. And then when we talked about markets, right, we were talking about how, markets is this ability to kind of have transactional interactions. Right. And so again, we're looking at the internal and external, or the, like, again, I'll show you really quick since I'm still big. So caves, we have selective and blending, and then markets, we had internal and external. Right. And so we were looking at what that meant. External markets, people need to be out in the marketplace. Internal markets, they want to bring that to them.
Yes.
Right. So it's those kinds of energies that we were exploring.
Okay.
Okay. So if you guys want more on that, just watch the previous.
Yes, watch the previous one.
Episode.
So kitchens, shall we do kitchens? And is this you?
So I am kitchens.
Okay. And do you want to stay big or do you want me to level us out?
No. Let's chat together. I don't need to stay big. So kitchens, I say that and then I'm like, oh, but no.
It's easy to fix.
Left is wet and right is dry. Okay. So it's interesting because when Ra talks about these two, he's talking about people who have really strong reactions to the wrong kind of humidity. Right. So if things are really dry in their environment or if things are really wet in their environment, they have these, kind of strong reactions. Right. And so if you're a wet environment and you're in an environment that's more kind of tropical and things like that, then that's going to feel really good. Whereas if you are a dry environment, then maybe somewhere in like Arizona is going to feel good for you. And so just kind of noticing that in terms of even how you set up your house, right? Somebody who has a wet might want to have a humidifier in their room, whereas somebody who's dry might want a dehumidifier, right? It's that kind of thing in order to just feel good in the environment. Kitchens overall is about, it can be your kitchen, but it's not specifically that. The idea is that it's where things can be transformed. It's about being able to alchemize.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so, yeah, like, we're not living just in the kitchen, although I mean, I do enjoy being in the kitchen.
Hmm.
But the idea is that we need to find places where we can naturally combine things. Right?
That's
And so you
interesting.
think
Hmm.
about, like, yeah, you think about a kitchen, right? It's where, when we again, we have people over, we didn't go into the living room once. We all hung out in the kitchen, and if it's open for me, into the dining room. So we, like, just hung out in that section of the house.
Hmm.
Right? And so it is this kind of energy of, okay, there's food cooking, and there's all of this, talking happening, and we're eating, and we're just enjoying that company. But there's this kind of transformation that's happening while we're doing all of that. Right?
Hmm.
We're transforming the food that we're making, but we're also transforming in ourselves as we're opening to these deeper conversations and really just enjoying that company.
So that could also be the studio or the sewing room,
Mhm.
especially if there's an opportunity. I mean, because that's the alchemy of art.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful, yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And the idea too, I mean, people talk about kitchens, and they talk about, it can be the studios. It can even be like, well, they say like factories, like things where things are made, where they're built, where
Hmm.
they're created. So there's a lot of different things that could be kitchens without specifically being a kitchen.
Sure. But I think it's really important to think about that is it's the alchemy of it. It's
Mhm.
where things are transformed.
Yeah, and they're transformed, and everybody's involved in the
Sure.
transformation,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, we can think about it too, like, for me, with kitchens, right? I love, and I've always loved that idea of, everybody kind of just talking, and we don't all have to be doing the same thing, but maybe,
Mhm.
one person's working on this and somebody else is doing something else. And, we're just having conversation. It's that
Mhm.
ability for a lot of different things to kind of be happening,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And yet they're happening, and it's together.
Hmm. I love that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, for me, that's how that really, yeah, nourishment, that's how that nourishes
Hmm.
me.
Yes. Well,
Right.
yeah. Yeah. And, many people believe that the kitchen is the heart of the home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And
like
it's
that.
interesting even in my work, because I think about how, this idea again of like alchemizing. I do mental health as my practice, but I bring in energy work, and I bring in human design stuff, and I bring in somatic work, and I bring, right? Because I like that ability to bring all those things together and
Yes.
see how they work together and how they flow, and can I create something new by bringing all of that
Hmm.
together, right? So again, it's that same idea of, it's still part of my environment by doing that and having that be in my day-to-day experience.
I like that. I like that. More people have come in. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for
Mhm.
the Laugh and Learn about Human Design. And this is Environments Part 2. We're talking about the kitchen's environment, and we will also be talking about the mountains
Mhm.
today. And yes, there'll be a part 3 because we'll do valleys and shores in that.
Yeah.
So be there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate you too taking the questions, because I'm just like, la la la.
No, no, no. This is great. This is great. So
Mhm.
yeah, so kitchens, if somebody is has the kitchen's environment and they're not in that environment, how might one address that?
Yeah. So I think it will depend on the person in terms of how they like to bring things together,
Okay.
right? Because we all like to bring things together differently,
Mm-hmm.
right? But to be able to bring things together in the sense of, well, if it is kitchen, cooking a nice meal and bringing things together.
Mm-hmm.
It could be experimenting with different things.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, like crafting, right? Being able to bring different, even, you know, um, I want to say modalities, and I know, well, that's maybe it's okay word. It's not the exact right word I'm thinking of, right?
Yeah.
But together. So maybe you're going to do some, work and you like to paint and you want to bring in some other kind of texture work or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Into it. Creating things, right? Finding a way to be able to create in your environment.
Sure.
Um, Also, for me, I find I I want to say eclecticity, being eclectic,
Absolutely.
right? I have a lot of different things, and I'm just looking around my office at the moment, and I have all of these different things that go together, but they're not meant to be together specifically,
Oh, sure.
right? If
Sure.
that makes sense.
It does make sense. It does
Mm.
make sense. Kaylee said media, paint, paper,
Media.
fabric.
That's the word I was looking for, Keely. Thank you.
There you go. And
Mhm.
hello, Annie Barrett. Good to see you. I finally got back to your email and sent that to and responded. So
Very cool.
and so it is. I think I may have asked this before, and I'm not sure if there's an understanding or how to of it. But do we know a percent of people who do the body graph where they are in each of these?
I don't know. Jovian Archives does do statistics for
Okay.
human design, and they do it for type, type and strategy, authority. I think they do it for the crosses, they do it for the profile lines, but they don't do it for the personal health system.
Okay. Yeah,
I have yet
it
to
was
see that.
just a question. And Jolly James said, I feel like we workspaces might be a good kitchen's environment.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be. I mean, if your workspace is one where you have the ability to kind of take something and turn it into something else,
Hmm.
that's a kitchen environment.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really interesting because I'm thinking about this at work and the importance of how would one, if you're a kitchens, and I know some people are caves, there
Mhm.
needs to be space in the environment for everyone to have the quiet study area where you can go and have your lunch without people around you
Mhm.
and to read a book, something along those lines. But I think that's an interesting layer of things to consider, especially when we want to have healthy work environments where
Mhm.
people feel heard, seen, valued, and appreciated. I think those are all things that are, yeah.
Well, and it's interesting, like, I'm thinking about as you're saying that, like a government work building, just because that's such a, you know, especially
Hmm.
here in Ottawa. And, managers have offices and then everybody else has like little cubicles and whatever else. But you think about it and it's like, okay, but caves people need to have an office.
Hmm.
They need to. Markets, internal, needs to have a space for people to come to them,
Yes.
right? Markets, external, you could put them in a whole big room and they'd be good to go.
Yes.
Right? To be in that space. Kitchens, as long as there's some alchemizing of energies and all of that going on, they're going to be okay.
Hmm.
Right? Mountains people are like, okay, well, we need to have a bird's eye view, which we're going to get to soon. So they're going to need a different kind of space to be able to observe and
Yes.
see like everything that's happening in that environment. right? And so as we're working our way through, we're going to notice that. And then you think about, okay, well, valleys need, whether it's narrow or wide, determines on how much open space they need around them. Right? So somebody who has wide valleys and is like crammed into this little kubi in this tiny little space, like that's not going to work for them.
No.
Right? And so we notice that. And then shores, which we'll get to again later, is where, two things kind of come together. Right? So two different environments are going to come together.
Yeah.
Right.
Hypnicity asked, I'm Swiss. Does that make me a mountain person? Ha ha ha. I don't know, but I think you've done your body graph. So
yeah.
And Mary said, hello, Mary.
Hello.
I just loaded that chart you are talking about, and I was lost, but now I get what you were talking about how I think how yeah. Okay. So, well, I'm glad this is helping. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're sharing this information.
Yeah. So what we're talking about in the chart is going to be this like bottom left arrow. But if you, here, I can even pull it up really quick on my site. Let me just do a little example. So if you're on my website.
Okay. Mary wanted to finish that up and said, thinking about how many categories does the environment have? About talking about, I think, how many categories does the environment have?
6. So
Yes, 6 categories.
Yeah. So whenever we're looking at the personal health system in general, and so I think I showed here, right? So determination, which we haven't really talked about, but determination, environments, perspective, and motivation. And they're always going to have 6 because it's the 6 lines within the I Ching.
Oh, right? Yeah. Duh.
So it's always going to be 6.
Yes.
But there's the caveat to that there is, as I said, the left facing and the right facing, right? And so there's 6, but subcategory wise, that makes it.
Yes. There's always subcategories.
Right.
Always.
But with any of them, it's always going to be 1 through 6. Right? Because that's just how the I Ching works.
Sure. Okay. Did you want to talk about mountains now?
Yeah.
Or were you gonna okay.
Sure. I was gonna just share really quick, just so that if you're on the website,
okay. Yep.
Again, just so that you can see exactly what we're looking at. So just a really quick. So
there we go.
There we go. So we're looking right here at this arrow, which direction it's facing. Okay. And on this chart, we're looking at this number, right? But you guys don't have the numbers. So what you're going to do is you're just going to scroll down. Number 2, we know is markets, and you can click on it and get the information. And then because it's right facing, that's how you're going to know, okay, well, if I'm right facing and I'm markets, I'm external, right? Whereas if you're left facing, you're internal. Okay. So I'm going to stop that sharing.
Okay. There we go.
Just so that you've got that to see. So, and it's the same thing. Like if your kitchens, right facing is going to be dry, left facing is wet.
I find it interesting that the 2 aspects, the dry and the wet. So yeah. So, are you you're a kitchens. Are you a dry or a wet?
I'm a dry kitchens.
Okay. So you're not one of these going to some place that's humid. You're very happy with an environment that is hot.
It's interesting because it's funny. I do better. Like one of the things that they talk about is like plants, right? So dry does better with succulents, cacti. I don't. Right? Give me a lily or an African violet or anything that you have to be like finicky with the water with, though, and I'm okay.
Okay.
Right? And so it's interesting because it's kind of I almost would be curious to see, and I'd have to look at where on the line I am between that switchover.
Oh, sure.
Right? I mean, a water plant, I don't do great with unless it's just sitting in water. If I have to water it
Yeah.
all the time, I'm not
Yeah.
very good. But, but there is that kind of piece to it. But it's really funny because whenever there's like water anywhere, I'm like, why is there water everywhere? Clean this up. What's good?
I love that.
There is that. But that being said, I love water. Like I love baths and showers and so there is that piece to it.
Okay. Yeah, my daughter's kitchen's wet.
Yeah. So it would do better, with a bit of that kind of humidity in, the air and all of that. So
it is on the human design chart. You've updated the website, so the chart itself is a little easier to find stuff, I think.
Yeah, it's there in the chart. Again, I can share the screen really quick and I'll show you where to see it.
Yeah, I want to have people, we're going to talk about mountains next, but I want to make sure people have the opportunity to see what we're talking about, because some people, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. So if you go ahead and I'll just create a new chart really quick. So I just did a Jane Doe born today at the start of our show.
Okay.
And so it's just HD traditional. So if you do the drop down, there is a whole bunch that you can choose from. Just stick with the traditional, the one that's already in there. And then you just hit view your chart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so again, this is what we're talking about. But if you scroll down, right at the bottom here, it says environment. And then it's going to tell you what environment you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the part that we're looking at right now.
Yes. So
okay,
perfect.
So if it's not there, let me know, but it should be.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about mountains.
Yeah, let's talk about mountains.
And so I'm a mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and mountains is the shift, right? So where landscapes like we were talking about, the upper is landscapes, the bottom is hardscapes.
Mm-hmm.
And so landscape, I think we often think that means that it's more nature, and it kind of is in the sense that it's mountains, valleys, and shores. That's what it's called.
Yes.
But you can have those in cities, right? Like we can still don't, just because you're one of those doesn't mean you have to move out to the country or move out to the shore, the mountains or whatever.
Yes.
You can still have those in your experience wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
Although we do look at it and sometimes it does mean, actually being in the mountains might be good for you.
Mm-hmm.
In the city, if you're in the city, then being, at the top of an apartment building or the top of a high-rise building might feel really good for a mountain environment. Being, in a condo on the highest floor. So being able to just kind of notice that, how can I give myself that bird's eye view?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's going to be really important. Okay.
Yes.
And so mountains, the other part of mountains is it's about oxygen, right? Breathing. And this is important for mountains, and it's going to be important for valleys too. So mountain people can actually, according to Ra, can actually suffer from having too much oxygen, which is really interesting. Right. So often we're talking about like take deeper breaths and all of that. Whereas people who are mountains people, if you think about the idea of mountains, right, when you're up high, you get into those, higher altitudes. It's the oxygen, there's less.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so there is a component of that, which I find absolutely fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we're, talking about breathing, right? Like, okay, I don't know, I don't know what the study would be for this, but I wonder how many mountain people have smoked in their life,
Interesting. Okay.
right? Because if you're smoking, I think Rob puts that to the equivalent of like living at about 17,000 feet.
Hmm.
Like it's something like that. Or
Okay.
yeah. Right. But there is this kind of piece of like, how can I get myself to kind of feel that in the body? And so people with mountains may do things in order to d- deal with the oxygen levels in the body.
Yeah. Which is something that Pamela just said. There's the same percent of oxygen at high altitude. It's the partial pressure that changes. That's
Hmm.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It's interesting too, because one of the other things that Ra talks about is like drinking, right? Because there's an association between, if you're drunk and the neocortex being flooded with oxygen,
Okay.
right? And so it would just be an interesting study again to see like, is this something that, mountain people maybe don't feel very good after they've had a bit to drink or
Yeah.
not, right? And again, I'm
Gotcha.
not a mountain person, but I'd be curious, right?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Are you asking me about when I drink, what happens?
If you want to share, if not, that's okay.
Um, I am I am it takes a lot to get me intoxicated.
Mhm.
And
You already have so much extra oxygen, and then you're
could be. It is definitely and it's a hard liquor thing. It's not, you know, why
yeah,
bother if it's, certain things. But which is why I don't do it very often. So,
yeah. Well, and that's it, right? So just noticing your relationship with these things and then looking at it from a new perspective.
mhm,
Or is there something else here that I need to take into consideration?
yes.
Right. Now, the other really interesting thing about mountain people is that they are meant to be up high, right? They're meant to be above things because it is that observer piece, that bird's eye
Mhm.
view. And so often people will think that mountain people are more aloof,
Interesting. Okay.
right? And and sometimes they might think that mountain people look down on them.
Hmm.
Right? Now, that's not always the case with mountain people, but it is interesting when we look at what they're here for in terms of their perspective, right? Because they are meant to give that perspective. It's not just that they're meant to just be up there and that's it, right? What they view from that mountain is meant to be, shared to help.
Yeah.
Right? And
Thank
so,
you, Maru.
mhm, thank you.
Yeah. So
Um,
I know for me that idea of is sometimes being up high is a good thing. However, I really do like to. I need to know what's the overall plan. What are
mhm.
we trying to do? Because then I can put the pieces and parts together in the way that's gonna get us there most efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because when you say that, it is that idea of that getting up on the high ground, right? You don't need to be in the nitty-gritty of it because you're not gonna get to see all the bits and pieces if you are,
Hmm.
right? But if you're able to get yourself to be into that place of observing it and getting all the information, now you're able to do exactly that.
Yeah, and I need to have more information. I ask a lot of questions just to help me have a sense of everything's
Mhm.
that's going on or expected.
Yeah. And I think that brings a good point too, in the sense that like a lot of this, we look at it and we look at it as this kind of like physical, but a lot of it is psychological. A lot of it is about how we're able to view things in our experience.
Mm-hmm.
right? And all of it too is about how we find refuge within our experience,
Ah,
right?
okay.
So being caught up in, say, the markets might be a bit overwhelming, right? Unless a mountain person has had the time to really observe it all and go, okay, I'd like to go there, and I think I want to check that
Oh
out.
yeah, I was thinking the mountain person is the one with the map to be able to see what's going on in the market and where we're going, where we want to go,
Mm-hmm.
and how we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'm also the kind of person who's like, and we have enough time between here and there to stop at some other places when we experience something new that was unexpected.
There you go.
So Kaylee's like, oh my God, the amount of over researching I do for vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I do love this, that high altitude cultures adopt by having higher levels of hemoglobin. And I think that's a really good point, because whatever environment we are, we're going to adjust to that environment, to what our environment needs to be with the actual environment we are in.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's healthy and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
So
Most
sometimes,
definitely.
by healthy, maybe I shouldn't say that, but sometimes it's beneficial and sometimes it's a survival. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we, with all of these, remember too, like there is everything's a binary with this, right?
yes.
Because of the I Ching and because of the yin yang and all of that, everything is a binary. And so even here, like with mountains, you're going to have, well, the two binary here is active and passive. And so, you think about, okay, being up there and what that does to the body, that change of oxygen, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of people associate that with being more sedentary or not moving as much because of that lower
Mhm.
levels of oxygen, but that's not necessarily the case,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
I know there's a lot of comments, so I'm
Well,
giving
there's a
you a
lot of
moment.
really good comments, and
Mhm.
yeah, well, the man with the plan, sometimes it actually gets out of my brain and onto paper.
Mhm.
Mary said, I grew up in a two-family house. We lived upstairs and always noticed the whole experience being different than on the ground. I am not a mountain person, but interesting the difference between being high and low.
Mhm.
So yeah, and YT Social, some religious beliefs are the people on higher grounds are always safe from sins and other problems.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting. Well, and you think about it, like if you put a cave person on a mountaintop versus a mountain person in a cave,
Yes.
that idea of, are we going to feel it? Are we going to notice it? I think, we are going to notice if it just doesn't feel right.
Yes. We may not, we're going to notice if it doesn't feel right. It's what do we do after that? Because a lot of
Mhm.
times we don't have the language to express what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
And so that's why things like this, conversation about human design really helps. And this is why we started this.
Yeah.
This is just a way to understand more about our natural tendencies so that we can understand them and lean into them, use them, or plan for when we're in a situation where I'm not necessarily going to feel as comfortable. What do I do to take care of myself?
Yeah.
So yeah. Mm.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, right? Like if you look at it, and you'd have to check yours, or I can check it for you in terms of what the mountains are, right? So the active versus passive mountain piece. So active, I think you said you are left, so you'd be active,
mhm.
which is that busyness, right? And so
Yes.
high activity mountain people need to burn off oxygen,
Hmm.
right? And it's interesting because Ra talks about how these people are meant to be high, and not necessarily in the drug sense of high, but just that piece of being able to have that experience of really being able to have the insights and have the ability to sense, right, where they are based on that level of oxygen in their body.
Yes. Very,
Right.
very interesting.
Yeah. So again, that piece of like, I don't know how many here are like mountain climbers or things like that. But if you've ever been in a place where you've been in a high altitude, there is a certain kind of giddiness or that can come with that lack of oxygen,
Oh, sure. Sure.
right?
And that's a biological thing.
Yeah.
And so, oh, and Maru said a cave on a mountain.
Hey, there you go.
Sure. Sure. One of my favorite places is South Lake Tahoe, where you can walk up a mountain, be surrounded by mountain, and then look at the water.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, again, we know how we talk about hardscapes and landscapes, right? Hardscapes really about having those parameters
mhm.
in order for that safety, whereas landscapes are really about how we're able to view it all,
Ah,
right? So we
mhm.
do see that difference. So sure, like a cave on the side of a mountain, a cave person might feel really good with that because they can be in the cave, they can maybe have people come to the cave, and so there is that kind of perspective. And then it is again now that becomes a shore, which is something else entirely, right? Where these two
Next
come,
time.
where these two
Yeah.
come together,
Mhm.
right?
This is fascinating. Thank you. And yes, this is a lot to take in. I mean,
Yeah.
I was actually trying to figure out, gee, how many of these human design conversations have we done? I did not look that up, but it's a fascinating thing to
Mhm.
go. This is just touching on it because you can get your body graph done, which I would recommend. You can buy this big book, purchase responsibly, know your limits, do all of that
Mhm.
stuff. You also have the human design coloring book and journal. There's lots of different ways to do it. I probably so you have a firmer understanding. Is this one of the reasons that you created that to help people in different environments and different aspects
I
to be
don't get
able?
into the personal health system in the coloring book,
Okay.
right?
Don't even think that, everybody.
It's
Gerald
the
was
it's
not was egging you on.
There's so much to learn with human design, and this is really about getting in touch with the basics. So the coloring book goes into the centers, it goes
Mhm.
into the aura types, and it goes into the authorities.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the aura types, you have strategy, right, and authority. And those are all really important to know and to know how to navigate, right? Because once you're in the right environment, you still have to know how to navigate. And if you're in the
Isn't
wrong environment, you really need to know how to navigate.
isn't that fascinating? You may be in the right environment, but you have to understand how to navigate it. That's really good. I think that's important.
Yeah. And we don't, if we're not honoring our strategy and our authority, we're even in the right environment, we're going to feel misaligned. If we're in an environment that is not conducive to alignment and we're trying to honor our strategy and authority, it's going to feel a little bit harder,
Mhm.
right? And there is a piece to that that's worth noting because we're most aligned when all the pieces kind of fit together,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so as much as we're doing little bit by little bit by little bit, right? We're looking at like the puzzle pieces.
Mhm.
Human design is this massive puzzle,
Yes.
right? And so I'm trying to pull out some of the really important pieces that we need as foundational pieces,
Yeah.
right?
You are very, and you do this very well. You put it in a language that I can understand. So thank you. I do appreciate that. Not everybody's able to do that. And you
Well,
do
thank
it.
you.
You're welcome. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Haley said, I realized my desk, where it is at work, I have it facing the front door and the rest of the office, so I can see everyone coming and going. My top of the mountain, so to speak.
Very cool.
Yeah. And Pamela said, it seems like a sliding scale to me too. I'm happy and settled in a certain environment and very uncomfortable in others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it can be a sliding scale depending on your environment and how much of aspects of your environment are there, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And Mary agrees with you, Pamela.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to mention, Gerald, and I think that this is important for mountain people,
Mm-hmm.
is mountain people are meant to be in their mountain.
Okay.
You know how we talked about, like, you know, that idea of going down into the markets and things like that. Mountain people, generally speaking, when they're in alignment and they're feeling that alignment, don't want to come down from the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at, you know, who is right for mountain people and how do those connections work and all of that, oftentimes mountain people are going to say the right people for me are the ones who are willing to climb my mountain.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because it's important for them to stay in that high ground place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean like you're not going to ever go into the market or you're not going to do any of that kind of stuff. But, you know, again, we're not like necessarily specifically in the physical here, but the psychological, the emotional, the philosophical, what that looks like, right? That high ground person um, is also probably going to want to have the deeper conversations, right?
Sure.
Want to be able to be met where they're at in the sense of, and I don't mean this in that you're not going to meet somebody where they are, because you do that and you do that phenomenally. That's not what I mean.
Thank you. No, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. But it is that piece of, you know, I'm going to hold that space so that you can meet me here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that we
Yes.
can take it to that deeper level.
And Janet is a mountain person. They checked.
Cool.
Well, and I would say that really goes to my philosophy as a reader and a person who is, you know, sees insight and looks at Akashic records. Akashic records are totally mountain type of things for me when I think about it. So I always want people to have a broader understanding of what is going on,
Yeah.
and support them with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
Which is beautiful, right? This idea of, you know, being able to, again, bring somebody up the mountain, right?
Yes.
Help
Yeah.
them get out of what they're stuck in.
Yes.
Helping them get out of all the little bits and pieces and the nuances and all the things that can get us kind of jammed up.
Yes. Let's look at the big picture and stop worrying about whether or not the dishes are done today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the big picture and then how it relates.
Yeah.
So Kaylee said, like Heidi's grandpa in the books, he enjoyed having people, but they had to come to him. So, and Maru and Daniel just talked about living on a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I also like the idea that it's not necessarily physically higher. It's where that you can have that larger perspective and to see that connection to things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the physically higher plays a role in the sense of like the oxygen and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in kitchens, that wet and dry has a very physical aspect to it.
Yeah.
Right. But then
Midnight.
it's about the
Go
other
ahead.
stuff. Well, no, it's just then it's about all the other stuff that we can do in those spaces.
Yes, absolutely. Midnight Apothecary and Bakery. Hello.
Hello,
Said,
hello.
I live in a cabin in the mountains, and when I head into town, it feels like I'm heading into another realm, and I can't wait to get back to my quiet, peaceful home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Annie Bear says, this could explain so much.
Good.
So, and YT Social said, if the chart says shores, but you like mountains, then it means you don't know your exact chart. YT Social doesn't know their date of time of birth.
Okay, so we could take a look. Yeah, when I do readings for people, if they don't know the exact time, we actually do a time range chart. And we're able to see throughout the day what changes within the chart.
Sure.
And then, well, thank you. And then we're able to determine which one fits the best for you. So we can do that and see with mountains and shores. There would have to be quite a change, but we go through the 6 every little, like a day, a little bit less than a little bit more than a day, 6 out of a week, right? So like a little bit anyway, but the idea of like mountains to shores probably wouldn't go that far in a difference in a day. Like you might switch one, right? And if you switched one, it could go, shores could go to valleys, shores could go to caves, but shores wouldn't necessarily go to mountains.
Yeah.
Right. But again, shores is, and we'll talk about this next time, the coming together. Right. So you could like that. I'm kitchens. I love caves too.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. So there is that component of it, and they're not even in the transference relationships. So there is a possibility that we like multiple parts of this in our environment, but where we thrive is what's important to know.
That is so well said. That is well said. So we are at just over an hour. These go so quickly.
They do.
And Pamela said, I love the shore and the mountains, and I am happy either place. Don't put me in a cave or a cavern.
There you go. Yeah. Well, and it's so funny that you say that. I also love shores and I love mountains. And I love caves for what they are in human design, but don't make me go into an actual cave.
Yeah. And Midnight Apothecary and Bakery is agreeing with you, Pamela. We are not talking about shores today. We're going to schedule another Laugh and Learn Human Design about environments. And so like and subscribe to both of our channels so you will be notified of when we have this conversation. So what do you have coming up, Jennifer?
What do I have coming up? So next, today at 5 Eastern, I have Twilio Talk with Tanis. Tanis and I host Authentic Spiritual Conversations, and we have a really awesome guest on with us today.
Oh, uh-oh. I wonder who that would be.
I don't know, but it kind of makes the show a little bit of a twist. We're no longer Twilio Talk. We become TarotStache.
Oh, so everybody should subscribe and follow and see what happens.
I would think so. See who this special guest might be.
There you go. And you do have a lot of new things that are going on with, so I think this is an important thing. Go over to Jennifer's channel, show your support, read the About You, because you've got lots and lots of stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
I actually just did, we just did our first live episode for the Love of Mystics. And so I had Melissa Sophia Joy and Curtis Childs on, and we talked about all kinds of amazing mystical experiences and how we can bring that more into our day-to-day lives.
love it.
And so that is on the YouTube channel and also on Facebook now at For the Love of Mystics.
Love
So
it.
we've got that, and Tanis and Dr. Lisa Thompson and I do a Galactic Gab once a month, and so you can catch that also on the Tube YouTube channel and see that as well. So I think my channel is down below, but it should be at My Holistic Self for YouTube.
Yes, I'm going to go find it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting there. Okay. Yep. Got it. Oh, Maru.
Oh, thank you.
And there's the channel link. So there's that. So
Awesome.
love it. So I'm going to be on Twillo Talk today. I am over at Cleo the Seer's channel for the Mystic Four. And then I've got a lot of other really great shows coming up this week. So please like and subscribe so that you can not miss us. And by the way, playback is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Playback works. And if you watch the playback, please leave a comment. We appreciate it. So we're going to say goodbye. See you later. And we're going to schedule when we can do our next show, Environments for Valleys and Shores.
Perfect.
So, thanks, everybody. Bye.